Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. What you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a confession wrapped in silence, sealed in a letter, and dropped like a match into everything I once called home. There were paper snowflakes falling from the ceiling. That's how it started. Not metaphorically, actual paper snowflakes. Hundreds of them, suspended on thin threads across our living room like some strange indoor blizzard. At first, I thought maybe it was a surprise birthday decoration, or a late attempt at making the house feel festive. But it wasn't my birthday. It wasn't any holiday. It was a trap. Each snowflake had writing on it. Some had phrases. Others had entire paragraphs. Some were printed emails. A few were screenshots of messages I instantly recognized. Not because I wrote them. But because I didn't. They were hers. Layla's words. Her lies. Her plans. Her confessions. Her apologies, but not to me. She had hung her betrayal like Christmas ornaments. There was one snowflake near the door that simply said, "You were never supposed to find out this way." I hadn't even taken my shoes off. My coat was still dripping from the rain outside. I remember standing in the middle of the room, spinning slowly, reading things I can't unread. Things like, "He still thinks I'm at yoga. I almost feel bad. You make me feel like I'm finally living. Calvin's just, safe. But boring." That one hit like a bullet. I felt something collapse in my chest. I didn't even know what yet. Just, something. Then I saw the envelope. It wasn't hanging. It was resting on the floor, perfectly centered under our ceiling fan, as if it had drifted down from heaven, or hell. My name was written in her handwriting, the soft curve she used when she was trying to be tender. I didn't want to open it. I already knew. But I still opened it. Because I'm the kind of guy who believes there's still hope in broken things. Who glues together mugs, and hearts, and routines. Who stays, even when no one notices he's there. The letter was cold. Not cruel. Just clinical. Like I was a chapter she had finally finished reading. "Calvin. If you're reading this, then I didn't have the courage to say it to your face. Or maybe I didn't want to see what it would do to you. Maybe that makes me weak. Or maybe it just makes me honest, finally. I'll read the rest to you in part 2. Because this isn't just about her leaving. It's about what I did after. It's about what she didn't expect. And it's about how, for the first time in my life, I didn't stay quiet. I didn't read the letter in one go. I sat down, held it in my lap like it might bleed ink onto my hands, and just stared at the front where she'd written my name. Calvin. That's all. No, sweetheart, no, Cal. Just my full name, centered and distant, like she was addressing a stranger. I don't know why I waited. Maybe I thought if I left it unopened, the world I knew would stay intact a little longer. As if the truth was Schrodinger's cat, only dead the moment I dared to look. The paper snowflakes still hung around me like spectators. And somehow, they felt more alive than I did. But eventually, I unfolded the letter. The first line wasn't, "I'm sorry." It was, "You were always gentle with the truth." I wasn't. I read the next few lines in a daze. This started long before Travis. You probably suspected him, but the truth is, it wasn't about him. It was about me. About waking up next to someone I loved, but didn't know how to live beside anymore. Travis. So there was a name. I didn't recognize it immediately, but I would. I'd come to learn everything about Travis before the week was over. She went on. You deserved honesty, but I buried it under comfort. I knew you'd forgive me, even if I didn't say the words. That made it easier. That made it worse. That line still echoes in my head at night. That made it easier. That made it worse. It was the most accurate description of our marriage I'd ever heard. She wrote about how she'd been preparing to leave for months, how the retreat she took in July wasn't really a retreat. She was in Santa Cruz, with him. How she started leaving hints on purpose. Not because she wanted me to find out, but because she couldn't take the guilt of completely hiding it anymore. I told myself if you found out, you'd be free. But you didn't. You stayed. You always stayed. And I realized, you weren't seeing me anymore. You were seeing the version of me you built out of loyalty and memories. That's when I cried. Not when I read about Travis. Not when I realized our 10-year marriage was a stage play I hadn't been given the final script for. But when she said I didn't see her. Because I did. I swear I did. I saw the way her hands trembled when she played guitar. The way she hated lemon in tea but pretended to like it when my mom visited. The way she always watched the credits after a film, just to honor the people behind the magic. But maybe she was right. Maybe I saw a silhouette of who she used to be. Maybe I spent years clinging to echoes while she was slowly fading out the door. At the end of the letter, she wrote. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I don't want a confrontation. I don't want tears. I don't want you to ask me to stay. Because I won't. And she was right. She didn't come back that night. Or the next. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. Her social media accounts were gone by morning. Her closet was empty. Her toothbrush was gone. Even the chipped blue teacup was missing. But here's where the story doesn't end. Because the one thing she didn't take, was her laptop. It was locked. Password protected. But I knew her too well. I guessed it on the third try. And what I found? It made the snowflakes seem like a mercy. I sat there staring at her laptop like it was radioactive. The air in the apartment felt different, heavier, tighter, like the walls were listening. It was almost poetic, in a cruel way, how the woman who left me a blizzard of written confessions forgot the one thing that could tear the rest of the veil off. Her laptop sat quietly on the kitchen island, lid closed but not powered off, almost like it was waiting for me. The password was her old cat's name, Juniper84. I had suggested that name years ago because she used to doodle juniper berries in the corners of her sketchbooks. She'd laughed at the time and called it hideously cute. That was us back then, weird, sweet, harmless. Now, I typed those same letters and numbers into her login field with shaking fingers, not knowing if I was unlocking truth or torture. The desktop loaded quickly. Nothing suspicious at first. Standard stuff, a few folders labeled commissions, client sketches, tax docs. But then I saw one folder tucked awkwardly in the corner. It wasn't hidden. That would have been smart. No, it was simply named, for me. I hesitated. Something in me wanted to close the laptop and walk away, to finally respect a boundary even if it came too late. But I opened it. I opened it because curiosity is stronger than caution when your whole life has already been broken. Inside were videos. Dozens. Short clips. Long recordings. Files named with dates, cryptic titles like Echoes, Salt, Greenlight, and Birthday Lies. I clicked on the oldest one, dated almost 2 years ago. In the first frame, it was Layla. Hair tied up, no makeup, curled on our old red armchair in the living room. She stared straight into the camera and whispered, "This is for future me. The one who's too much of a coward to say it out loud." Then she started talking. About me. About us. About how she felt like she'd been living next to a memory. That I was kind, soft, safe, but she no longer felt like she belonged in the world I had built for us. She said I was always trying to keep the glass from cracking, but in the process, I never noticed the rot behind the frame. And she cried. Not little tears. Full, shoulder-shaking sobs. It gutted me. I wanted to reach through the screen and hold her, to tell her I wasn't a villain, that I was trying. But I couldn't. Because this version of her, this honest, unfiltered Layla, was gone. I watched another clip. This one from our 9th anniversary. I thought we had a good night. We went to a jazz bar. She wore the green dress I loved. We even danced. But in the video she recorded that same night, she said, I smiled through it all. I kissed him. I laughed. But I felt absolutely nothing. I paused the video and just sat in the quiet, the sound of the fridge humming in the background, mocking me with its normalcy. I was living in a ghost house. Then I opened a file named Greenlight. This one was different. It was filmed in a hotel room. The lights were dim. She wasn't alone. Travis was there. His face didn't show, but his voice did. His hands. His shadow. They laughed. They toasted wine glasses. And then, she turned the camera toward herself and said something that made my mouth go dry. Calvin thinks I'm at my friend Emily's tonight. He texted me asking if I wanted soup when I got home. I almost cried from the guilt. But Travis made me promise tonight is about me. And honestly, I haven't felt this alive in years. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking so badly I knocked over a glass on the table. It shattered against the tile, and all I could think was, another thing broken that no one will bother to fix. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the fact that she had documented it. Saved it. Labeled it like chapters in a story. A story where I was the background character, the one who watered her plants and scheduled the dentist appointments while she went off and lived. I don't know how long I sat there. My phone buzzed a few times. I didn't look. I didn't move. I just sat in the dark apartment, surrounded by the remnants of her curated silence, and felt something crack inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, finally. And yet, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the very last file in the folder, one created the morning she left. It was titled, If He Finds This. I didn't want to open the last file. I stared at the screen for a long time, the title, If He Finds This, flickering slightly from the soft light of the laptop in the dim room. My heart was pounding again, but not in that adrenaline panic way anymore. It felt dull now. Heavy. Like my body had grown tired of sounding the alarm, and now it just ached from inside out. I should have shut the laptop. I should have erased the folder, thrown the whole thing into a drawer, maybe even into the dumpster behind the building where the raccoons scavenged through old pizza boxes. But I didn't. Because no matter how shattered I already felt, I needed to hear it. Whatever final thing she had to say, whatever closure or cruelty she'd left behind, I needed to know it. The file opened with her face. Close up. Eyes red, makeup smudged, strands of hair falling messily across her forehead. It was definitely the same day she left. She wore that green linen blouse I bought her last Christmas. She never said thank you for that gift. Okay, she began, voice shaky, breathing hard like she'd been crying for hours. Calvin, if you're watching this, then you opened the folder. I guess that means you figured out how to log in. Part of me hoped you wouldn't. The other part, the real part, knew you would. You always chase the ending, even if it hurts you. She gave a half smile at that, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then her tone shifted. I know you've seen the other files by now. So let's just get this out. Yes, I cheated. Yes, it went on for longer than I will ever fully admit. No, I'm not proud of it. No, I don't expect you to forgive me. She paused for a long moment. Her hand came up to rub her temple like she was trying to massage clarity into herself. But here's the thing, she continued, locking eyes with the camera, you probably think this was all about passion. Or attention. Or the excitement. And yeah, maybe that was part of it. But the truth is uglier than that. My stomach twisted. I started hating you, she said softly. Not because you were cruel. Not because you did anything unforgivable. But because you never stopped loving me. And that made me feel trapped. I physically leaned back in the chair, like her words had reached out and slapped me. You looked at me like I was still that girl who danced barefoot in the rain. You remembered my favorite songs, made tea the way I liked it, left those little notes in my lunchboxes. I should have been grateful. I should have clung to that like oxygen. But instead, I suffocated. She looked away from the camera, her voice cracking slightly. You didn't grow bitter like other men. You didn't yell. You didn't accuse. You stayed soft. And the softer you were, the more it made me realize how hard I'd become. She wiped her face. Travis didn't love me better. He just loved me differently. He didn't know the version of me that you held on to so tightly. He let me reinvent myself. And that felt intoxicating. Then came the line I will never forget. You were the man I needed when I was lost. But I started resenting being found. I paused the video. I couldn't breathe. My chest was burning like I'd swallowed fire. I had spent years believing love was about consistency, about choosing someone every day even when they changed. But here she was, saying that my loyalty was the very thing that drove her away. I pressed play again, even though I didn't want to hear more. There's something else, she said, folding her hands now, a strange seriousness settling in her expression. I didn't tell Travis everything. Not about you. Not about me. He thinks I ended things clean. That I packed up, left a note, and moved on like a healthy adult. He doesn't know I created this folder. He doesn't know I filmed those videos. He doesn't know I kept our wedding photo in my suitcase. Another long pause. I guess I just needed one place where I could still be honest. With myself. With you. She reached forward, and the image started to blur slightly as her finger brushed the lens. The final thing she said was so quiet I had to replay it 3 times to catch it. I hope one day you understand why I left. But I really hope you never understand how it felt to leave someone who didn't deserve it. Then the screen went black. I stared at the reflection of myself in the now dark screen. I looked hollow. Pale. Older. I hadn't realized how still the apartment had become. The fridge wasn't humming anymore. The rain had stopped outside. Even the ceiling fan had somehow gone still. I sat there in silence, thinking about everything she said. About how I'd loved her with everything I had. About how she walked away not because I failed, but because I didn't. And somehow, that made it worse. But something in her voice, especially at the end, didn't sit right with me. There was tension in her eyes, the kind you don't put into words. As if she wasn't telling everything. And then I remembered something, Travis. The name. I still didn't know who he was. No social media tags. No real trace in her contacts. But the next morning, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. One line. We need to talk. It's about Layla. The message came at 7:12 in the morning. I was still half asleep on the couch, surrounded by balled-up tissues, an empty bowl of cereal, and her laptop, which I hadn't touched since watching that final video. I hadn't showered in 2 days. My mouth tasted like dust and regret. When the phone buzzed, I nearly ignored it, thinking it was some automated delivery confirmation or a junk ad. But the preview of the message made me freeze. We need to talk. It's about Layla. There was no name. Just a number. I opened the thread, staring at the text as if more words might magically appear if I waited long enough. My heart immediately jumped to one name, Travis. I responded. Who is this? A minute passed. Then another. Then. The guy you think you hate. I sat upright. My throat dried. This had to be him. Travis. The man who had stolen my wife while I was busy trying to hold the world together with kindness and casseroles. The man whose voice I'd heard in those videos. The man whose hands I had seen in the hotel room footage. The man I'd cursed in whispers every night since she left. He sent one more message. Meet me. 1 hour. Bonnie's Diner. I'll be in the booth by the jukebox. I hesitated. Every rational part of me screamed not to go. What could come of it? A fight? A screaming match in a greasy booth while elderly couples sipped their morning coffee? What was the point? But the other part of me, the broken, hungry, spiraling part, needed to see him. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. I just needed to look him in the eye. I needed to know what made her choose him. So I went. Bonnie's Diner hadn't changed since college. Same checkered floors. Same burnt coffee smell. Same overly enthusiastic waitress who called everyone honey. The place was nearly empty. Only 3 booths were occupied, and there he was, alone, in the back, wearing a denim jacket and sipping black coffee. I knew it was him the second I saw him. He looked like the kind of guy who didn't ask for permission. Confident posture, lean frame, rough hands. Layla always said she hated rugged types. Apparently, she didn't. He saw me, nodded once. I walked over, sat across from him, my heart thudding hard in my chest. I'm Calvin, I said, even though I didn't have to. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. I know. I've been trying to reach you for days. I wasn't sure if I should. I crossed my arms. Let's just skip to it. You said it's about Layla. What do you want? He leaned forward, looked me dead in the eye. She lied to me too. That shut me up. He pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. I didn't know you two were still married. I didn't know she hadn't filed for separation like she told me. I didn't know you were living together until 2 weeks ago. What? I asked, blinking. She told you we were done. He nodded slowly. She said the divorce had been processed months ago. Said you were, technically roommates. Said you were both just clinging out of convenience. He paused, frowning. She made it sound like she was doing you a favor by moving on. My hands curled into fists under the table. And when did you find out the truth? He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. When she disappeared. My eyes narrowed. What do you mean disappeared? Travis looked genuinely pained now. She left me too. 3 days after she left you. Packed up everything, left a note, just like the one she left for you, I guess. No warning. No explanation. No contact since. She deleted her accounts. Disconnected her number. It was like she just vanished. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. She told me she was going to start over, he said softly. Said she needed a clean slate. I thought she meant with me. But then she was gone. No goodbye. No answers. Suddenly, the videos she left me didn't feel like closure. They felt like the beginning of something much darker. Much more confusing. Why would she leave both of us? I asked, more to myself than to him. Travis hesitated. There's something else. He took out a small keychain flash drive and slid it across the table toward me. She gave me this weeks ago. Said if anything ever happened, if she left without warning, I should give it to you. Said you'd know what to do with it. I didn't touch it. I just stared at the tiny piece of plastic that suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. What's on it? I whispered. He shook his head. I never looked. She made me promise. But the way she said it, she looked scared. Scared? Layla. This woman who had orchestrated a double life with all the precision of a secret agent, scared. That single word rattled me more than anything. I finally picked up the drive. It was ice cold. If she contacts you, I said, standing slowly, let me know. I will, he replied. Anne. Calvin. I looked down at him, every nerve in my body buzzing. I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was part of. I gave a short nod, then walked out of the diner into the gray morning light, gripping the flash drive in my pocket like it held the key to a locked room in my own house. I didn't go home right away. I drove around the city for hours, watching people walk their dogs, open shop doors, sip lattes, and laugh. The world didn't care that mine had fallen apart. But I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for courage. Because once I plugged that drive in, there would be no going back. I didn't go straight home. I parked in the back lot of a library I hadn't visited since high school and just sat there. I held the flash drive in my hand the whole time, running my thumb over its smooth plastic casing like it was a worry stone. There was something about its silence that felt sinister, like it was withholding something, biding its time. I knew once I saw what was inside, everything would change again. And I wasn't sure how many more changes I could survive. Eventually, I drove home. The apartment was still cold and dim, the way I'd left it. The paper snowflakes still hung overhead. I didn't take them down. I couldn't. They had become part of the silence that wrapped around the place like a second skin. I made myself a cup of instant coffee even though it tasted like cardboard and dread. Then I sat down at her laptop, slid the flash drive into the USB port, and waited. It took a few seconds to load. The drive had one single folder. Titled, "In Case He Ever Finds Out." I paused, letting the weight of those words settle into my chest. I clicked it open. Inside, there were 4 files. 1 was a document. 3 were videos. I opened the document first. It was a letter. Not to me. Not to Travis. It was written to someone named Nina. Nina. If anything ever happens, or if this all comes crashing down, which I know it might, please make sure this gets to Calvin. He needs to know everything. I'm not proud of what I did. But he deserves the truth. Even if it destroys whatever's left of me. I didn't recognize the name. There was no other explanation, just that short, handwritten note scanned into a PDF. I moved on to the first video. It opened on Layla sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room. Her hair was wet. She looked nervous, constantly glancing toward the door as if someone might barge in. "Okay," she said, breathing shakily. "I never wanted it to go this far. It started as an escape, and I thought I could control it. But Travis, he started getting intense." My pulse quickened. I never told him everything. I let him believe things that weren't true. But then he started pushing. He wanted me to cut off all ties to my old life. He wanted me to erase Calvin completely. He even suggested I block him from his own accounts, joint ones. He wanted access to everything. Bank records. Passwords. He said if we were going to start fresh, we had to eliminate every piece of baggage. I felt my stomach twist. So she hadn't just left. She was being pushed, manipulated. And suddenly, I wondered if Travis had really been as clueless as he claimed. Layla continued. I started to feel afraid. Not just of being caught, but of him. He said things that made my skin crawl. Like, "I know you better than anyone ever will. And he'll never survive without you, but I will." She looked straight into the camera. I don't know who Travis really is. But I'm starting to think he's not who I thought he was. The video ended there. I opened the second video. This time, she looked more frantic. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she held the camera closer. I think he's watching me. I don't know how, but he knows things I haven't told him. He quoted something Calvin said to me years ago, something private. From a letter. One I kept in a shoebox. And now it's gone. My hands began to sweat. I'm starting to think Travis went through our apartment before I left. Maybe even while we were still living together. Maybe even before I ever confessed to him. Calvin, if you're watching this, I am so sorry. I let someone into my life who may have been dangerous. I thought I was escaping boredom. But maybe I walked into something much worse. Her voice cracked. I'm going to disappear for a while. I've set some things up. You might hear that I've gone traveling. I haven't. I'm not going to say where I'm going, just in case. But if anything happens to me, anything, you'll know it wasn't an accident. The screen cut to black. I leaned back, stunned. Everything I thought I knew about what happened had flipped on its head. Layla hadn't just run off with another man. She may have been running from him. And now she was missing. Not just from my life. But from his, too. There was one final video. It was dated a full week after she left both of us. Somehow, the file had been uploaded from a different device. The quality was lower. The sound crackled. She was outside. A forest, maybe. Trees in the background. The camera was shaky. If this is the last thing I ever record, she said, then let it be this. I never stopped loving you, Calvin. I just didn't know how to love myself at the same time. I made terrible choices. I hurt you. I broke something pure. But I don't want Travis to rewrite the ending. If he finds me, if something happens, please know that I tried to make it right. Then, just before the clip ended, she said something so bizarre I had to replay it 5 times to believe I heard it correctly. I found something. A file. On his computer. It has your name on it. Yours. And a date. From before we ever met. The video ended. I stared at the blank screen, cold seeping into my skin, even though the room was warm. Layla had found something that tied Travis to me, before we even knew each other. It wasn't an affair anymore. It was a setup. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the armchair near the window, lights off, the laptop screen glowing faintly from the kitchen counter, and Layla's final words echoing in my head on repeat. I found something, a file on his computer. It has your name on it. Yours. And a date. From before we ever met. That sentence burrowed into me like a splinter I couldn't reach. There was something deeply wrong about it, something that twisted everything I thought I knew. Why would Travis have a file with my name on it? Why would there be a date, one from before Layla and I even met? It didn't make sense. Unless, it wasn't a coincidence. Unless Travis hadn't stumbled into our lives at all. The next morning, I was at the library by the time they unlocked the doors. I needed a computer that wasn't tainted by her presence. I needed neutral ground, somewhere sterile, cold, and disconnected. I borrowed one of the upstairs computers, logged into an anonymous browser, and started with the basics, reverse searches, databases, public records, anything. I dug through LinkedIn, old forums, newspaper clippings, social archives, real estate records, campaign donors, criminal records, even digital footprints from school registries. I didn't even know what I was looking for, just something. Anything. And then I found it. A forum post from 2010. It was buried inside an obscure discussion thread from an old college writing board. Someone had been asking for help locating a man who allegedly falsified his identity to infiltrate a campus organization. The user claimed this individual had been involved in academic sabotage, specifically targeting a small group of students who had spoken out against a certain local political family. The man's name? Travis Burke. But here's where my chest went cold. One of the students he was suspected of targeting. Me. My full name. Right there. Buried in an old post like a ghost note from a life I didn't even remember clearly. I stared at it, heartbeat thumping in my ears. I hadn't thought about that chapter of my life in years, early college. There was a strange incident back then. My email got hacked. My senior thesis disappeared 2 days before it was due. I assumed it was a glitch. I never proved anything. Could Travis have really been involved in that? And if he was, what were the chances Layla ended up with him accidentally? I was no longer dealing with heartbreak. This was something else entirely. Something far darker. I reached out to the old forum admin, not expecting a reply. The site was barely functional now, an ancient relic of the early 2010s internet. But to my surprise, I got a ping 30 minutes later. The admin still monitored it. Said he remembered that post. Said the user who submitted it had also disappeared shortly after, never responded to follow-up questions. Now, I was spiraling. I left the library with a sick feeling in my gut. Travis had pretended he didn't know me, didn't know Layla was married. But what if he knew both of us? What if this entire relationship was orchestrated from the beginning? Was it revenge? A long con? Something else? I texted him. We need to talk. Face to face. He responded instantly. I thought we already did. Not about the affair. About before. About college. About me. No response. 10 minutes passed. Then a new message arrived. You should stop digging. Some things you won't want to find. I stared at the screen. My hands went cold. And then, in a surge of impulsive fury, I grabbed my keys and drove to the address he had given me during our first meeting. A studio apartment across town above a pawn shop. I needed answers. I needed them now. When I got there, the apartment door was wide open. Not unlocked, open. A single floor lamp flickered in the corner, casting warped shadows across the room. The place was a mess. Papers scattered, drawers ripped out, mattress flipped. But what stood out most was the computer, on the floor, screen smashed, cables ripped out. Someone had destroyed it, deliberately. Whatever file Layla saw, whatever truth she found, it was gone. But then I noticed something. A crumpled photograph under the broken desk. I pulled it out. My fingers trembled as I flattened it against my knee. It was a picture of me and Layla. At a park. From 6 years ago. But we weren't alone in the frame. Travis was in the background. Staring straight at us. I stared at that photo for hours. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Just a man who happened to be in the background, someone who just looked like Travis. But the more I looked, the more I knew. It was him. His posture, his eyes, the faint tattoo on his wrist barely visible under his sleeve. He'd been there. 6 years ago. At a park Layla and I used to visit every Sunday. He wasn't just a stranger who stumbled into our lives. He had been watching us long before either of us knew his name. I turned the photo over. There was a smear of pen on the back, faint but legible, "You were never the target." She was. Those 8 words changed everything. Suddenly, it all fit. Travis hadn't just broken up our marriage. He had inserted himself into it, carefully, methodically. And Layla, whatever her faults, whatever pain she caused, had figured it out too late. I returned to his apartment the next day with a police officer. The place had been scrubbed clean. No sign of him. No trace. Gone. Like he never existed. But I wasn't broken anymore. Because in the aftermath, something inside me shifted. Not in a bitter, cynical way, but in a clear, painful, honest way. For the first time in years, I saw myself. All of me. Not just the man who tried to be safe and steady and forgiving. But the man who had become afraid of being alone. Who let silence become routine. Who confused loyalty with self-erasure. And I forgave Layla. Not because she deserved it. But because I finally understood her. She wasn't running from me. She was running from herself. And when she realized Travis was never the savior she thought he was, she left both of us. Maybe to start over. Maybe to heal. Maybe just to survive. Weeks passed. Then months. No word from her. Until one morning, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name on the front. Inside was a photo. Layla, standing on a coastal cliffside, smiling, windswept. She looked peaceful. Alone. But alive. On the back. I'm okay now. Please be okay too. And I was. I moved out of that apartment. I took the snowflakes down, but I kept one, framed it. The one that said, "You were never supposed to find out this way." Because sometimes, the worst things in life crack you open, so the better things can find their way in. I started painting. Not well, but with feeling. I adopted a dog. I signed up for therapy. I reconnected with old friends. I'm not fixed, but I'm real now. And I've learned that sometimes, heartbreak isn't a dead end. It's a doorway. And if Layla ever sees this, I hope she knows I don't hate her. Not anymore. Thanks for sticking through this emotional ride on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever experienced a moment when your entire perspective shifted, maybe a betrayal, a twist, or a letter that changed everything, share your story in the comments below. What was your turning point? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction.